So deep trust. This is the next place we're going. Deep trust is built over time. It's built by fighting battles against the world, sometimes fighting battles with each other. It happens in the trenches. It happens where we're doing something together. It's not theoretical. You know, it's not just like day one, oh yeah, I deeply trust you. Whatever you do, I'm sure it's all good. That would be, what would we call that? Naive. That's naivete. Deep trust is based on experience with you. So it's gold when we can get it, but it takes work, it takes time, it takes commitment, and it's well worth it. So with deep trust, one of the reasons to work hard on deep trust, if you look at a risk-reward equation, is you can operate down in deep doubt and shallow doubt, again, fear and possibility, low risk, low reward. Everybody's kind of keeping their cards close. Nobody's taking any big risk, low reward. What would that, Marcy, what would that look like for a Choreo? Kind of a, low risk, low reward engagement, something on the, kind of smaller side, step by step?
Smaller, small, but only doing subcontracts to ServiceNow.
Got it.
Low rates, they're doing all the negotiations, they handle all the escalations, and we just show up and do work.
Right, got it. Yeah, you guys get that? It's like, you see how the risk is low, but the reward's also low. And that's, when we're in this circle here, this is low risk, low reward, and you go, well, why would I want to risk anything? Why would I want to do all the work to get to deep trust? It's because, if you want high rewards, the risk also increases. But I want to say something about this. I don't believe this is real risk, it's potential risk. If you just try to jump into the high risk, high reward situation without building the deep trust, you are in a high risk situation. You're hoping you have deep trust so that if something goes sideways, you're able to fix it. But if you have actually built deep trust, I would suggest that a high risk, high reward situation is actually not that high of risk if you've built the deep trust. Does that resonate? Marcy, would you say that's true?
Yeah.
What would that look like for a Choreo? What would be a situation where you guys are putting a lot more in the game, a lot more reward, taking more risk, and it's critical to build that deep trust?
Some of these really large deals that we're starting to work with clients where they are, we're looking at multi-year, multi-product implementations, and but we're truly transforming how they're doing work, right? So it's not just, oh, here's this cookie cutter solution that we're putting out there for you. It's transforming their world in a way that, like, we're successful with them. They're going to work with us long term, and they win and we win because we're going to get that visibility of working with high profile clients.
Gross. So it's truly transformational for them in their business, which is how they win. For you guys, you're building a referenceable client of doing something really special that gets you more projects like that.
Yep.
Brilliant. Yeah. And would you say it's true that in that you have to have that deep trust if you're going to go big like that?
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. And I'll say with those clients, it's also where we're seeing like they recognize that value as well, right? That that it's we're starting from a place of, this isn't their first rodeo. They know what good looks like and what they need from a trusted partner as well. So
Great.
We're not teaching them, which is tough.
Got it. Yeah, so that's good. You know this going in, so you select them based on their ability to play this way.
Right.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's really wise. Yeah, there's one of the best business books ever, Good to Great, by Jim Collins. And people have talked a lot about strategy and culture, et cetera. And one thing he says that's really wise that distinguishes great companies from good companies is get the right people on the bus. You can change your strategy along the way, choose the right partners, get the right people on the bus. And I think that's very wise. So great. So how do we do that? How do we get to deep trust? What I want to suggest is 5 big steps. We can see it over here. 5 big steps are these that, in essence, we're able to align behind strategic, compelling goals. Big things, like Marcy said, business transformation, not, incremental change. So there's something big and compelling that we can align behind. And even on a smaller engagement, it may be really big for the client. So it needs to feel like something that's strategic and compelling to the client. We need to create realistic action plans. So we can't just leave it, kind of big and fluffy at 60,000 feet. We got to create realistic action plans. We need to create clear, explicit agreements along the way, right? This is breaking down like you guys do with your sprints, right? We break this down into smaller chunks, clear agreements, more tactical agreements along the way. We keep our agreements or we make new agreements while there's still time. So part of managing expectations is if we're going to try to change our agreement, we do it as early as possible. We don't hit people at the last moment before Paul's about to drop. And like we talked about this morning, we have to be willing to build mutual accountability along the way. And we'll have a whole section on day 3 on how we build mutual accountability. Okay? So this is a story. For some people, they're like, well, that would work well in an easy situation, but what about a really hard situation? I want to step aside from business for a moment and tell a little story about a place I believe this was done in a very big way. Back in the 90s, late 90s, I took a couple business trips to South Africa. And, as most of you know, South Africa had a terrifically rough road moving out of apartheid. And they're back into a terrifically difficult place. So nobody's saying, hey, everything's great in South Africa now. They've had a very challenging time come out of things. But I want to focus on the period that was transitional, when they were coming out of apartheid. And there was a guy you all have heard of named Nelson Mandela. Everybody heard of Nelson Mandela? And, basically, Mandela, because of world pressure, needed to be released from prison. He'd been in prison for about 28 years. And basically, he had an impossible choice to make. They were facing a crossroads. He was released from prison. If Mandela had said, we need to fight, that country would have gone into civil war in a heartbeat. And the problem was 95% of the people were black, and 95% of the weapons were owned by the white establishment. It was going to be a bloodbath. Both sides knew it. And the government that had put him in prison for 28 years agreed to meet with Mandela. And Mandela made one of the bravest choices ever. He agreed to work through a form of this with the government to save the country, putting his own feelings aside. So what they agreed is we've had this terrible history with apartheid. But what people really, really want most in our country is we want to know what happened to our loved ones. People who had disappeared, are they dead? Are they captured? Where are they? What happened? And so they put into place something called the Amnesty Council. So the strategic compelling goal is we need to avoid a civil war and we need to rebuild our country. The realistic action plan is we need to have amnesty councils. And the agreement behind the amnesty councils is if someone was a frontline member of the military and police at that time, not one of the political leaders, for 1 year, they could agree to meet with the families in an amnesty council. And they could come forward, and the agreement was if you tell the truth, you face the families, you take responsibility for your actions, help them understand what happened to their loved ones, all will be forgiven. Brutal, terrible choice, but the families wanted to know more than they wanted to hold on to their anger. However, if you don't come forward within 1 year, then we're coming after you with everything. You basically you've lost your chance at amnesty. We're coming after you with everything. So, in essence, you either keep your agreement or you're going to be accountable, and that's where this goes. So what I want to suggest to you in very small ways up to very huge ways of an entire country that at that time was able to navigate their way through an impossible situation, these 5 steps can provide guidance on how to navigate through that at a strategic level. That make sense? Okay. It's doable. It can be done in almost every situation in some way. So for us personally, what can we do? How do we build trust? How do we create and expand trust? First thing is being really sure that when we're creating agreements, we're creating them really well. And so the 3 steps are, we call it ACT, A-C-T. Be sure we know who's accountable. Be very concrete, what specifically is going to happen, and make sure we understand the timing of what's going to happen. If any of those 3 is missing, we don't have a full agreement. What do people do if they don't want to take responsibility when you don't have a full agreement? They find the open window, right? Yeah, well, we said we didn't, it wasn't clear who was going to do it. We thought you were going to do it. Nobody said who was going to do it. If it wasn't concrete, well, that wasn't really spelled out, so it wasn't clear who was going to do it. And timing, well, we were never really clear about when it was going to happen. So there are open windows. So we're going to hit this again later about mutual accountability. This seems very simple, but it's really important that we nail down very explicit agreements because that is what we're standing on with accountability. If we don't have explicit agreements, we have zero chance of holding somebody accountable who doesn't want to be held accountable. Who here has a quick example of where you thought you had an agreement and somebody on the other side wiggled out of it because of some lack of these three? Time when you thought you could hold them accountable and they were like, no, one of these things fell through. Anybody got one?
Every car dealership ever. Sorry.
I was hoping for a choreo example, but I'll agree with that. I'll agree with that. All right, we'll go with that, and we'll come back to this when we talk about accountability. All right. So let's talk behavior. Let me take a step back. So this is something that applies to everything in the course, but I want to introduce it now. We call it spheres of influence and spheres of control. So sphere of control is the things we can actually control in life and business. I would assert that the sphere of control is much smaller than most of us think it is, right? The sphere of what we can actually control on our own is much smaller than much of us hoped for, and life teaches us that it is not as big as we think it is. The sphere of influence, what we hope to teach you over the next 2.5 days, we believe the sphere of influence is bigger than most of us think it actually is. So we have more influence than we think we have less control than we think we have. To complete the circle, sphere of alignment are things you can neither control or influence. So what do? It's best to figure out how to align with the thing you can't control or influence. Understand it and figure out how to align with it. When we talk about the business needs ladder later this afternoon, I'll come back to that. These can be things like corporate politics, corporate culture, markets, big forces that we just have to figure out how to align with. So in this case, we're going to work on the sphere of influence. I'm going to ask you to do something now. So on the next page, Deep Trust Behaviors, could everybody make sure you're on that page right now? And if you don't have something to write with, let me know, and we will look for something for you to write with in the room. Everybody get to the page and make sure you have something to write with. We're going to do this real quick, and then we're going to put you with a partner. All right, here we go. So these are 7 deep trust behaviors from a handful of different bodies of research. It's an integration of things that are kind of proven over time that really raise the trust level. I'm going to ask you to rate yourself in general from 1 to 5 on each one. 5, I'm a rock star. 3, I'm okay, I'm pretty good. 1, I need a lot of help in this area. 0, I've never even thought about this. I have no idea. All right, so the first one, clarify and manage expectations. So this is this piece about how you make agreements, clarify them, and get clear agreements. It's something you're really good at. You get clear agreements, and when you need to change an agreement, you manage the expectations early. There's a lot of reasons why we don't. So a 5 is I'm a rock star, and then on down from there. So clarify and manage expectations. Second one is, and this one, by the way, is not within your control, deliver excellent business results. 5 is just where we are right now, whether it's within my control or not, but for what I'm responsible for, I deliver excellent business results. So this is a little harder because it's not within our control, it's within our influence. Okay, so whatever we promised on the business side, I'm able to deliver on. All right, 3 is keep your commitments. So this is when I make a commitment, I follow through. 5 is almost always if I make a commitment, I follow through, or I've managed the expectation that we're going to have to change the agreement early. Okay? Next one, number 4, take personal responsibility. So if I have any ownership for something that went sideways, I step up and say, you know what, we could have done that better, I could have done that better. You know, we dropped the ball on that one, and I promise you we're going to improve that. We're going to fix this. So take personal responsibility. Number 5 is practice inquiry before advocacy. We'll talk a lot about this as we keep going. Marty hit this earlier. So I seek to understand before I seek to be understood. Before I basically, you know, try to get my view across, I take the time to empty the glass and seek to understand. Then, once I understand, I'll seek to be understood. 6, I stay in close, consistent communication. Extremely hard in today's world with the pace and the virtual nature of things. But I stay in close communication for whatever is appropriate. It's close, it's consistent. I'm in touch. I don't drop off the grid for any period of time where people are wondering where I am and what's happening. 7, if you think about the exercise this morning, how do we get from conflict to problem solving? I'm good at getting us from conflict into problem solving. This is something I know how to do. The client wants to fight. I know how to move them through, like in the group, the collaborative conflict this morning, or what we just did with trust recovery and inquiry. I can get them from, a battle into problem solving together, and we're able to work it out together. All right?